story to share. So I encourage you to listen and take what you can from Kent's life experience. And then when we get together in small groups, we're going to talk about how this story maybe kind of relates to us in some of the things that we've been through. So Kent, come on up, and thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you. Well, you got it on. I'm Kent. I'm an alcoholic addict. First of all, I'd like to thank the Lord for giving me the opportunity to share to you guys my story. And it's what you don't give away, you can't keep. And that's part of serving. And some of that's in the program, in the rooms that we walk in. I'm going to put my glass on so I can read. I already gave you my name. I was born and raised in Fargo, North Dakota. I attended Activity Elementary School and Shanley High School. I also went to Fargo South for shop classes. I don't remember much as from ages from 1 to 7 years old, except I was a handful. Apparently, when I would get mad, I would swing on my swing set and hold my breath until I passed out. This is what was told to me later in life. I have 4 siblings, Renee, Jamie, Bryce, and Ashley. When I was about 8 to 10 years old, I was already seeing doctors for my behavior. I was put on Ritalin, and the result of this was the school secretary every day at lunch time over the intercom calling my name to come take my medicine. I would get frustrated because everybody knew. I was approaching 5th grade at this time and seeing the principal on a regular basis because I did not like to listen to people tell me what to do. I managed to make it to 8th grade. Now it was time to wake and bake in the morning, as well as smoking cigarettes and a little drinking on the weekends if I could get away with it. All the windows in our basement were screwed shut from the outside to prevent me from sneaking out. I also believed I made my first trip to juvenile court during my teen years. I had several trips back to juvenile court. Mary Hall was the judge every time. At the age of 14, I was sent to Twin Town Treatment Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. I was there for about 30 days. It did nothing for me except I knew I had to catch up when I got back. I started my freshman year at Shanley High School. I wanted to add I did play basketball, football, and soccer during my elementary and high school years. By the age of 15, I was partying just about every weekend, drinking, smoking pot on special occasions, crank and mushrooms. I was getting into more trouble. I had no respect for other people's stuff, nor did I listen. I did what I wanted when I wanted. This behavior continued until I was sent to home on the range for boys. By this time in my life, my friends and I were stealing cars on a regular basis, ripping off beer trucks, pizza trucks, grocery stores for whatever, vandalizing so much stuff and expensive pranks. Face down on the boulevard, guns drawn on the news type stuff was taking place in my life. And I didn't think nothing of it. An example, one day we were throwing rocks out onto the freeway at cars. When we got caught, the gentleman explained to us that one of the rocks landed in a baby seat. No law was involved in this incident. Could you imagine we could have killed or hurt a little baby? I have been involved in so many incidents like this in my life. It's a shame. I was now on my way to home on the range for boys. After being there for 2 months, I moved into CC Hall. So there was Eagle Hall and then CC Hall. Now I was able to get a weekend visit back home. I was excited. I got on the bus in Beach, North Dakota. We stopped in Dickinson and at the bowling alley to pick more people up. I met this dude there. Shortly after that, I was drinking all the way to Fargo. When we arrived, I knew I was in trouble. So what do? I walk across the street, and you got to be as old as I am to know about this place. It was called the Pink Pussycat, to see if they would serve me, and they did. Next day, I was on my way back to home on the range for for boys because of my bad choices. My mother wasn't going to deal with it. I was always game for something not good. This landed me in a room kind of like a solitary confinement after I got out. I did buckle down so I could complete the program. I started playing basketball and bull riding in rodeos. I made the paper in Beach, North Dakota, this time for scoring 24 points in a game. I'm doing my homework because I want to make it to Boys State at NDSU, and I did. I was elected mayor of my group, which was an honor. I don't like people telling me what to do, telling me what I can and what I cannot do. I have a severe problem with authority. Eventually, I was back to work just in time to get my first DUI at the age of 20. By the age of 22, I received my third DUI, which resulted in 60 days in Cass County work release program. It was winter out. They allowed me to work 6 days a week. My father owned the company, so Saturday mornings, I'd go out and go ice fishing. I almost lost my work release. Problem with authority. I always worked the summer months with my father growing up, pouring concrete to try to keep me out of trouble. It allowed me to drink with his friends. I was in a relationship with my high school sweetheart. We were going to get married. What happened to that was me. From the ages of 22 to 29 years old, I was living a fast-paced life, fighting, drinking, girls. I lived a crazy life. I never feared consequences. I did not even think about them. My father passed away when I was 29 years old. My dad was my best friend. We seen a lot together and went through a lot together, good times and bad times. And I totaled a few vehicles too. And there was always something constant with me. My father would tell me, Kent, church would do you some good. I just ignored that. A few months after my father passed away, I woke up one Sunday morning and I told myself, I'm going to St. John's. Monday morning, I did. And they admitted me. The first time in my life I ever answered the questions they had truthfully. I was there about 30 days or so. I completed the program. When I was released, I did what they told me to do. Find a meeting and get a sponsor. I did that. I started attending Faith Lutheran Church at 8 p.m. Monday nights for my home group. I met my sponsor there. His name was John. At this point in my life, I was not drinking, but my behavior remained the same for the most part. When I was about 31 years old, I was pouring concrete for this contractor, and he came up to me and he invited me to his church. I'll never forget what I told him. I said, I went to Catholic schools my whole life. I have enough church for me and you, both of us, you know. I know a lot different now. At the age of 34, I met my first wife. At the age of 37, my son was born. His name is Jackson. My wife had 4 other children, Brady, Katie, and Krista, and Jasmine. I thought the world of these kids. Never a dull moment, and never a dull moment when I'm in the picture. At the age of 37 years old, I decided to buy this company called Mastercraft Builders. My goal was to roll everything over into J.W. Moritz & Sons Construction. I wanted to be the biggest concrete company in Fargo. This ended up in a big life mess. I went broke, and I could not admit it. Pride, shame, guilt, you name it. When it was all said and done, I had 8 checks that were left, totaling $28,000 in North Dakota, and any check over $500 is felony, so you can figure that out. I had 8 felonies just on the checks. So what do? I go to places where I have credit, and they know me, and I charge stuff, and I take it to the pawn shop. So I had some cash to pay for some things. Pawn shops ended up calling NODAP because I pawned brand new TVs, so this is theft by deception. I'm using my wife's checks without her knowing, buying groceries and small bills. I lived in West Fargo at this time. My house was going into foreclosure. Every time somebody knocked on the door or the bell rang, I'd almost fly off the roof wondering if it was the cops. You know, the peekaboo stuff in the curtain and just that knock. My anxiety was extremely high. I finally ended up in jail for 6 months. While I was in jail, they sent me to Jamestown in evaluation for mental health. I was divorced in jail. That was very hard at the time. When I was in jail, I attended all the Bible studies. I was reading my Bible and praying every day. After 6 months, I was released and put on 5 years of probation and had to pay restitution. God, and the reason why I say God was involved in this whole thing is because what they were offering me and what I got, they offered me 5 years. And all I did was 6 months. Had a hand in all this. I was working for Ron Stensgaard at Quality Concrete at this time. Everything was going pretty good for a few years. I was not attending any AA groups or any faith-based groups until that Friday when I decided to park my pickup and take the company van with a load of guys in it and off to the bar. This did not end well. That following Monday morning, Ron drove to Minot to have a heart-to-heart with me. This was the start of a downhill slide in 2006. Ron, who sold Quality Concrete to the employees through an ESOP Corp., he finally stepped down at Quality Concrete in 2013, and he opened Summit Site Works in 2015. I went to work there for him. My drinking progressed to 3 to 4 times a week. I received my 4th DUI of my life in a company pickup. I did not tell Ron for a few days. At this point, I have had so many conversations about work and life habits, I would just lie to him like everybody else. I did not want to face the truth. This one day, a gentleman by the name of Norman asked me if I'd help him with his fence. I said yes. So that Saturday, I loaded a skid steer and auger and drilled his holes and set his fence posts in the proper spacing. That night, I was buzzed up, and he had some mess, so I tried it. Next thing I know, it was like somebody turned the outside into an HD mode. Everything was the grass, the trees, the colors were vibrant. I've been against meth my whole life. I'm a crazy man, but I thought, how could you ever shoot Drano in your body? Smoking and snorting was my delivery system. I was off and running again. So now I have meth, alcohol, work. What a combination. I'm using that work, hitting them porta-johns, doing rails off my cell phone, driving from one job to the next, stopping at the liquor store so I could mix vodka with my Gatorade to bring some balance in my life. Summit Site Works ends up being awarded this big hotel job in the cities, and guess who gets to go to represent Summit Site Works? Me. I thought, perfect. Out of sight, out of mind, 300 miles away from Fargo, time to party. The job took about 3 months or so. My life is completely out of control. I don't pay bills. I don't pay rent. I don't pay anything except my child support. I'm terrible with money, period. I always have made a good living. I realize it don't matter how much money I make, I'm still not going to pay them bills. I'm going to get kicked out or evicted or foreclosed on. I don't know if I missed it. Hang on for a second. Oh, yeah. It's kind of got cut off at the bottom. I'm sorry. So all these things were taking place, and I would get on my knees and pray to God and asking God to take this obsession away long enough for me to get some help. Next day, I would use. Pray again. Next, the same thing would happen. I could not stop. So I'm sitting at home and I tell God, I'm going to stop praying because you're not listening and answering. Something deep within inside me, it lasted about maybe 15 minutes or something like that. I got on my knees and I prayed. I'm getting kicked out of my townhome at this time. I'm renting. I'm moving into a motel at this time. I'm not working. I remember standing looking in the mirror. I could see and feel this bulge in my right side of my stomach, which was my liver. I weighed about $145. the thought came to my head that I had this bottle of Klonopin, clonazepam. I could eat them and call it good. That scared me. I've never had a thought like that in my life. So I don't know why, but I called my sister, Renee, in the cities. And it was like this. I was admitted to Sanford Health for one day. After that, I went to Moorhead on a 3-day hold and detox while my sister was trying to figure out what the next move was for me. She called and told me about New Life. I wanted nothing to do with this. She told me about these faith-based programs they have. One, Genesis. There's two, there's Passport. I did end up going, and it was the best thing for me. I got involved in their groups. I was attending devotionals in large group in the morning. I was reading my Bible again and going to IOP at Share House, which is intensive outpatient, if you guys don't know, for 3 times a week. And I started attending Lighthouse Church and their spirituality group on Sunday night. After I think about 6 or 8 months, I was back to work. Everything was going good. I met this girl at spirituality group on Sunday night. After a while, I finally asked her if she would like to go out. She said, "I'm not interested right now." I continued to be persistent, and we started hanging out. She has 3 wonderful kids, full of energy. I grew to really love them. I was off and running again, one lie after another, trying to impress her of how big I am. I lied about everything. I was so scared to tell her because I knew the outcome. I have been here so many times in my life, I know the feeling. We ended up getting married based on a bunch of lies because my self-worth sucks. The same time frame, my mother passed away from COVID. She had many underlying conditions, and she was in an elderly care facility. One day, the lies started coming out, and I was exposed for who I was. The shame I felt was overwhelming, hard to describe. I was caught. I have never felt pain this deep within me. One night before Celebrate Recovery, I reached and grabbed her and told her to, it all got kind of chopped off. I told her to fight for me. And in doing so, I put a bruise on her arm. I don't recall it this way. I know the story, so I'm just going to say it. I don't recall it this way, but I believe what she told me. But I was so angry with myself. Oh, here it is. For myself, for what I had done. I believe her. It's the last thing I ever wanted to do. We ended up getting divorced. Her daughter and I visited many coffee shops while I was married. This one time she said, "You come across rude and mean." This stuck with me. Why? I know why now. What is in your heart comes out of your mouth. I believe without a doubt God delivered me out of my alcohol and meth addiction because it was like that. I have not had the thought or craving since April 8th of 2019. He knew I had all these other areas. Thank you, guys. He knew I had all these other areas of my life needed to come out. At this time, I was doing a Love's Travel Plaza in Valley City, North Dakota for Summit Site Works. And it's the hardest job I ever been involved with just because of what was going on. I can't even handle myself, let alone 8 to 15 guys and all the subcontractors and a set of plans that are like 3 inches thick. This job is on 40 acres of land. I find myself driving to the edge of this job site, getting down on my knees and crying out to the Lord, out to God. Why am I so disgusted in myself? I did this several times while I was there. I wanted him to repair the damage that I caused. This one particular day, I was driving back and drove by this guy out in the middle of nowhere. And this voice came and told me to go tell this guy God loves him. I kept going as I was going to go out to exit this part of the job site. It happened again, but real faint. So I turned around and went up to this guy. His name is Jason. And I told him, this may sound funny, but I'm supposed to tell you God loves you. He had a story about God, what God did in his life. And what I felt at that time is hard to describe. This is the start of many. And that guy was there for me, not me to go and tell him that God loved him. Nothing like that has ever happened to me in my whole entire life. This is the start of many. The surveyor is a Christian and he teaches the Bible study in Valley City. The excavator guy is a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ his whole life. He's never drank or smoked. These are guys that are on the same job site that I'm on. It was an inspiration to talk with him. The canopy guy was a Christian. He would take time to come find me during the day and tell me about the Lord. I would go look for him too. Crossland Construction Superintendent, who is a Christian. He loves to praise the Lord, and it don't matter who's around. Steel erection guy is a Christian. The plumber is a Christian. My boss is a Christian. And it's like, do you see God's hands and all this stuff? It's nothing that I did. And God is telling me, Kent, I'm right here. I always have been, and I love you. Follow me. So my whole story, you did not hear me talk about my son Jackson up until about the age of 9 or 10. We were pretty tight. All the kids and I used to take them to sports and watch and rollerblade and watch their mom play softball and all kinds of other stuff. I enjoy kids. I put myself in my son's shoes and I see what he sees and what I've been doing to him and what he thinks. My dad don't make it to my games. My dad don't pick me up all the time. My dad don't do this. My dad lies to me. My dad's a drug addict. My dad drinks. My dad got another family. He must not love me enough. This was very hard for me to look at. Today I put God first in everything I will pray about, and my son second. I love my son dearly. I don't know why God loves me, but he does, and I know it. I have this young feeling inside me, and I know God has great things in store for me. So today, I have a great job with a boss that has a love for the Lord. For there is no explanation why we are still together. He says he sees the Lord has great things for you. He has said this to me many times. And this same guy has fired me 3 times. I've been with him a long time. He's been with me through thick and thin, just a lot of stuff. A guy that told me about the prodigal son story. A guy that believes in 20 chances. A guy that pays all my medical insurance. A guy that matches 3% of my IRA. A guy that gives me 2 weeks paid vacation. A guy that gives bonuses. A guy with an abundance of grace. Now today, this has been a while back since I wrote this. I've done, revamped a few things, but when I was at New Life, I reared in my child support, but my child support's all caught up. Bought a house. I was working on personal debt. I can tell you today, I am basically debt-free. I made a 5-year plan that I made with my boss, Ron Stensgaard. He's one of my greatest mentors. And we put a 5-year plan, stuff that I need to move away from, stuff and goals and dreams in my life that I wanted to achieve. And in my second year, I was already into 4-year stuff. As far as having a certain amount of money in savings and doing different things and stuff like that. So every day, When I get up, I surrender my life to the Lord every morning before I put my feet on the floor and ask God to put someone in my life that needs to hear from you, or I need to hear something from you. Reason why I do this is because I know this other side of me that likes living in destruction and worldly things. I relate with Paul in Romans 7:15. I do not understand what I do, for what I want to do, I do not. For what I will to do is what I do not practice, but what I hate that I do not practice. What I want to do, but I'm doing the very thing I hate and yielding to my human nature. What Paul's talking about in here is that he wants to do the right thing, but he can't. He keeps doing the wrong thing all the time. And that's just me. Even though I wanted to do the right thing, I couldn't do it. He talks about his sinful nature. That's me. I'm enjoying walking with people who are struggling. God is working on my son, and we are talking. That's a touch and go thing. I'm grateful for all my brothers and sisters. I attend Celebrate Recovery. I attend church and don't just sit anymore. I'm working on being God's hands and feet, and I practice the fruits of the Spirit. And there was one thing I'd like to add. It'll be up on the screen. If there's anything that, through my life, there's a lot more besides what I read to you. This is just kind of a glimpse of my life and things that I've done. But the more I've allowed the Lord into my heart and things where I really take a look at myself, as far as leaning not onto my own understanding, denying my flesh, taking up my cross. So my life, this is what I lived. So he talks about two different paths in life that you can travel, biblically, two different paths that you can travel. There's a wide road and a narrow road. Some you'll hear about the wide gate and the narrow gate. So the wide road has got drugs, alcohol, lies. God took care of the drug and the alcohol for me. He redeemed me and delivered me without a doubt. But he wasn't going to leave me alone with that. My lies were a huge hang-up for me because I didn't want people to know who I really was. So a wrong to fix a wrong. That's what I've been doing my whole life. A lie to fix a lie. So that was a tough one for me. Lust, and then there was up there /sex. Deceitfulness, broken relationships, jail, stealing, attention, motivating, or would be what's your motive? Loneliness, tongue that tears people apart, etc. The list just goes on. So I know how to live that life great. I can live that life. I can have a broken relationship. I know what sex is like in the wide road. It ends up in a mess. I know what lust and lies in jail, it ends up in a mess. It's all broken all the time. So at a point, wherever it comes to in my life is that sin brings forth brokenness, because sin has consequences, every bit of it. It's a brokenness level that you get to where I really, which was about 2.5 years ago, where I really gave my life to the Lord and really started looking at myself. And the narrow road, God's values. What does God say about a marriage? What does God say about a relationship or about sex? Love, kindness, forgiveness, serving. Does it line up with my words? Narrow road meaning you start working on the inside stuff that holds you back from allowing God to show you you are perfectly made in his image. And so a lot of these things over here, no, I don't know what they look like in a narrow road because I've never had it. I've never had a marriage on a narrow road. I've always jumped ahead of stuff and it's fallen apart or something else has taken place that has ended in hardship. And, I tell people my story like this, and it's funny, but if you looked at a force, It looked like the Tasmanian devil ran through it. That's like the path that I made. There. So the more I allow Jesus into my heart, the more the narrow road. I don't want nothing that wide road has to offer in my life. I fall short. So I get this, I'll get like a static inside me to where there's a conflict, and I understand what that static is. And that's something that's coming either against me, or maybe I got to make a phone call to something, or it ain't. There's static within inside me, and I know what the difference is. And this is the devil's playground. So the Lord talks about the armor of God, putting on the helmet, the sword, the breastplate, and lean not on my own understanding. And God said, I'll send you a helper, which is the Holy Spirit, and I believe he works through many people. And I use that phone, and I reach out to certain people, because leaning onto my understanding puts me in that wide road, because that's how I think. And with that, I appreciate you guys for all listening, and God bless you guys.